Hello, welcome back to another video with Safe Haven Healing Ministries. I am Jose, and this is Jaziz. And today's topic is going to be about why it's important to separate from a domestic violence relationship, especially if there's an element of physical violence. And so I'm just going to get right to it. So, the reason you want to separate if there's physical violence is because there is a danger of someone losing their life. Oftentimes, the perpetrator will make threats like if you leave or if you get help, or if you attempt to in some way just go on your own, I will kill you. And as a domestic violence perpetrator, I'm going to tell you, you should take those threats very, very seriously. Um, you see, anger is a very, very dangerous thing. And lots of times, us perpetrators are just really, really angry, and you don't know when is going to be the next time where we're going to snap and take it to such a extreme measure. So, with me being a domestic violence perpetrator in the past, I would definitely say take threats like that very serious, because we don't want you guys to end up being another statistic. So if you can, get immediate help. And I know there is advocacy groups that can put you in an undisclosed location that can shelter you and your family, which is something Safe Haven Healing Ministries will be working for in the future as well.
Mhm. I'm going to agree with that. I think from a victim side, um, we tend to underestimate what our partner will do or the other person will do because we want to see the good in the other person. We want to believe that our love will be enough to change them, but we're not able to change people who feel worthless inside or feel entitled to hurt us. That's something that only God can change inside of them. So a lot of times we get into a place of codependency where we're actually enabling bad behavior towards ourselves because we're not setting boundaries. And one of the biggest boundaries you can set is separation. Is
Mhm,
saying enough is enough. We're not doing this no more.
mhm,
I'm not going to tolerate this certain behavior. And actually, in the Bible, if you read Revelations 2:20, it tells us not to tolerate a Jezebel spirit, which a lot of this type of behavior comes from. If you're
mhm,
not familiar with that, don't worry about it. Just understand we're not to tolerate violent and bad behavior.
mhm. So, yeah, with Safe Haven being a Christ-centered um, ministry, you're going to hear words like that, like Jezebel spirit, and a lot of Bible talk, to be honest. And that's because we want to center our healing through Christ. Now, another thing I did want to say is do not fall for the manipulation of the perpetrator, because they're gonna come to you and they're gonna be like, baby, I'll change, I'm gonna be different, I'm gonna get help, I promise. Do not fall for that. That is a manipulation tactic to get back inside your home, if especially if you ended up calling the cops and they ended up leaving. So that's a manipulation tactic to get back into your home. um, and sometimes the behavior starts right away. Sometimes it can take a couple weeks, a couple months, but eventually the behavior is going to start all over again, and you're going to be back in the same situation where they're going to be controlling, abusive, and once again, possibly physically assaulting you again. And so it's very important that you do not fall for that tactic. A person who is truly changed is not going to be showing that behavior while they're going through while they have already changed. And they're just going to behave differently, and you're definitely going to be able to tell. I've told people before, you can fake the funk for a while, but you can't fake it forever. So if they're faking it, eventually they're going to slip up, and it's going to show up in small things like my example, like burnt chicken, which is in another video, is like something like that. It's not super huge, is going to bother them, or the way you talk to them a certain way that's going to bother them, and they're going to show that abusive behavior. So it's only a matter of time before they're back at it again.
Right. In the world terms, they say it's a matter of time before the mask falls off, right?
Mhm,
So I really believe that a lot of people who, men or women or parents or whoever's being abusive to you, they generally do feel bad, but that's not repentance.
mhm,
That's not a change behavior. A change behavior is acknowledging that what they're doing is abusive, right? And they see that it is wrong and evil to be abusive and violent. So we mentioned that in our video called The Abuse Won't Stop Until These Two Things Happen, until this happens. And what needs to happen is they need to see, first of all, acknowledge their abusive behavior and then see it as an evil thing. That's
mhm,
what repentance, taking personal responsibility. If the person is saying things like, well, I'm sorry, but if you would have I'm sorry, but if you wouldn't have made me mad, or if you would have did this, I wouldn't have done that. And
mhm.
they're still kind of placing the blame on you. That's not repentance.
Correct, correct. That, as a perpetrator, I would definitely agree with Jaziz. Is where when I was a domestic violence abuser, I would make excuses for my behavior. Like, well, if you wouldn't have mouthed it off, if you would have cooked this right, if you wouldn't have done this, if you wouldn't have done that, instead of being like, I'm sorry that I did that. I shouldn't behave that way, because it's not right. So there's a difference. You can already tell there's a difference with what I just said. And yeah, it's correct. It's not that I didn't care that I was being abusive. I just had so much hurt and anger inside, um, that I would push whatever feelings I thought were wrong to the side. And so another thing I wanted to say is, if the police ends up getting involved with the domestic violence situation, speak out. Tell them everything you can tell them so that there's a police report. Um, and don't. I know you can be afraid because of the threats, but you need to speak out because you also need to advocate for yourself. There's only so much other people can do. You have to advocate for yourself as well, especially if there's children involved. You are their advocate too. Um, and so you got to make sure to advocate for the children and to advocate for yourself. And it's important. Police report, tell the truth, and tell them everything. Because what that's also going to do is that's going to create a track record of everything that's been going on. And so it's important that you let everything be known so they can use that in the court system, and if need be, get that person locked away for a little bit of time if that's what needs to happen, because they have to see the error of their ways. And
Yeah.
hopefully they also put them in domestic violence classes. Christ-centered domestic violence classes would be awesome, but that's not always the way the cards fall.
I agree with that. Now, if your partner or the person in your life has already taken the steps to threaten you and say, I want to kill you, I wish you were not here, I wish you were dead, and they get into choking you, you cannot delay. You got to get yourself out of harm's way immediately. Do not underestimate those words. You may be afraid. You might have to just throw whatever you have in a bag and leave, but leave because you can become a statistic, like we mentioned earlier. You don't want to become a statistic. Women and children and people die every day because they do not take the danger at hand seriously.
Yeah, like I said, there's places where they would put you in an undisclosed location. If that for some reason can't be done, then go to your family's house, like a sister or brother, where there is a male presence. Um, because a male perpetrator is going to be less likely to try and do something if you are in a place where there is another strong male character. Um, and so, that I would definitely advocate for that. If you can, if worst comes to worst, and some people might not agree with me, arm yourself. Arm yourself because, like I said, worst case scenario is you could end up being dead. Even your children can end up being dead. Anger is a very, very serious thing. And so, once again, this is coming from the perpetrator. Arm yourself, get yourself ready in case worst comes to worst. Um, and so, do what you need to do. Get in my state, in Oregon, you're allowed to have a concealed weapon license, so you can conceal a weapon. I'm not sure about the laws for an unconcealed weapon license, but that's one thing you definitely want to do is arm yourself in case you need to take extreme measures. If you don't want to do that, at least carry pepper spray, just at least some kind of deterrent in case something happens. Because the person that's a perpetrator, they can be very angry, and that anger can take them to do things that are very, very serious.
But because I believe that anger, it kind of blinds you. It puts rage, when you go into a rage, it blinds you. Now you're out of your mind, and you're in this place where you lose control, right? A lot of people lose control, right?
Hmm.
So you got to be careful for that. I watched a story online one time where the dad came to abuse mom, and I think he was choking her out in front of the kids. The kids jumped into action. I think they knocked him out. And sadly, they had to. He was killing her. He was actually killing her in front of the kids, and the kids were like, "We're not having it." And they jumped into action. I think the youngest was like 10 or 11 years old. They knocked that out. They knocked him out because he was drunk, right?
Hmm.
So don't put your children in a situation where they have to step in and do the unthinkable to protect you. I've heard these stories over and over again. Um, some of you might have to plan or come up with a safety plan and work it out over time, because it's, and some of you are going to have to flee with just the stuff on your back.
Hmm.
But either way, I mean, because you know the person more than what we would, you have to have a plan of action. You
Hmm.
have to think things through. If this happens, I do this. If that happens, I do that. Nobody's here to tell you how to do it, but you do have to do something, because your children do not need to be watching this. They don't. This tr- severely impacts children, traumatizes them, and causes them to do the same thing in their lives. And Jose, you know that because you were raised in that environment, then later you
Correct.
ended up doing the same thing.
Hmm. Unfortunately.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
so kids are learning, you're teaching them something by staying in that relationship. You're teaching your children, mom, you're teaching your children, your little girls, that this is okay to be treated by a man. And you're teaching your sons that this is okay to, how do you treat a woman? And it's
Hmm.
not okay. It's not okay. That's why we're advocating for constructive separation. not divorce, separation, and prayer. Pray for that other person that they will change from their ways, right?
Yes, and obviously, there is going to be cases where they just people aren't going to want to get back together because the violence was so extreme, and
Mhm.
we understand that as well. Um, but our hope is to bring a relationship back together with Christ as the foundation,
Mhm.
because I was a domestic violence perpetrator and I no longer am. So I fully do believe that Christ can change us. Of course, we do have to be willing as well. But yes, we do understand there's going to be cases where, you know, there's just no getting back, and we understand that as well.
Right. So, because domestic violence is heavily based on entitlement, every time that you show kindness and do good to that person, it feeds into this idea of entitlement. You're you are actually feeding a monster by being nice to the person who's hurting you. I know for Christians, we're supposed to love our enemies, we're supposed to do good to those who hurt us. But in this case, when you do that in a domestic violence situation, you're actually feeding the entitlement of that person. If there's no boundaries, if there's no setting your foot down, if you're not getting that person, there's no accountability, and you're hiding what's going on, what's happening is you're feeding a monster in your own home. You don't want to do that. You want to say, hey, this is not okay. This is not okay behavior because God hates violence. He does hate violence. So, separation, safety plan. Is there something else?
It's important to get away for your safety, if there's children, their safety. Um, yeah.
Because it will escalate, will it not?
Oh, definitely. And it can escalate so quick, like literally at the blink of an eye. It can. It can go there real quick. Um,
Quick.
and so that's why safety, safety, safety is the number one priority. Because like I said, we don't want you to be another statistic.
Hmm. And once that person lays their hand on you, it's so much easier the next time.
Mhm.
Once that person throws something at you and breaks it or hurts you with it, it's assault. I want you to think, I know it's hard, but I want you to think of the other person as a regular stranger. If a regular stranger put your hand on you like that or broke your stuff like that, what would your course of action be? Just because you're married, just because you're in love, just because they're your parent, oh, your brother or sister, whoever that is, just because they're related or you have a relationship with them does not mean that the consequences of their behavior should not be the same as someone else you would have met on the street.
Mhm. And so this one goes out more to the ladies, because we know there's obviously men that are the victims of domestic violence. But it just so happens that we hear about it so much more with women. But yes, if they put their hands on you once, separate, you know. But also think about this, because I know you can go into, oh, well, he still loves me, and we'll be okay in the morning. Um, well, when he put his hands on you, he cared more about hurting you than the love he had for you in that moment. And so just really think about that,
That's real good. I'm so glad you said that because,
because
yeah.
he should have cared more about loving you and treating you as Christ treats the church than putting his hands on you. But that's not how it happened. And so that's why we gotta make sure that if when they put their hands on you, that you separate. Because, yes, it's going to be easier the second time
Mhm.
and the third time. And next thing you know, you just say something out of line to them and they're just going to smack you. So that's why we got to make sure that if they put their hands on you once, that you separate and don't tolerate that behavior.
I agree with that. That's good. That's good. I think that we pretty much covered everything right here. What this video is about is taking immediate action. Don't let things go on and on and on. And so many women, including myself, have been in domestic violence for years, thinking we
Yeah.
can change it, thinking we'll get better. And it does not ever get better on its own. There has to be
Yeah.
intervention.
Well, another thing I'd like to mention is uh because of legalities and laws, if there is kids involved, um I would say if you have to do like an exchange, do the exchange at a police station. That way, if anything happens or the perpetrator tries anything, there's already a police presence there. And that's going to be much safer for you.
Yeah,
Um, or if you can't do that, at least do it in a public place where you know there's a lot of people. And don't do it in the parking lot, in a public place where you know there's going to be people present.
right.
Because once again, safety is the priority. Um, and so we got to make sure that we're being safe. If there's children involved and there has to be some kind of exchange, do not, for whatever reason, let that person come into your home. Uh, do not meet with them in a place that's not in public,
Don't get
where
in
you
the
know.
car with them.
Don't get in the car with them. Yep, exactly.
Don't get in
Mm-hmm.
the car with them. Don't.
Don't get in the car with them. Don't meet out in the middle of nowhere with them either. I mean, that's just not a good idea at all. Meet in a public place. Um, I would say preferably a place where there's a police presence, like a police station.
Right. Because and it is it's very dangerous when you're leaving a domestic violence relationship. It's the most dangerous that it can be is when a woman's leaving. So you really have to think this out. You can't, um, once you leave, you better be, you better leave because if they come back into this relationship, it can go worse for you because they're going to be angry that you left them. And that,
Mm-hmm.
a
Correct.
lot of this is rooted in rejection and pride. So if you leave them, they're going to retaliate. They're going to let you know, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I would definitely say there were instances where I wanted to retaliate for sure. And now I'm ashamed to say it, but like I said once again, that's who I was and not who I am anymore. Um, there was definitely a lot of rejection in me as well, and with that just comes anger, you know.
Mhm.
So that's why safety cannot advocate for that enough.
Right. Well, I thank everybody for watching and for listening. Please, there is domestic violence hotlines that you can call, and I suggest that you would do that. There's counselors and advocates, and people will help you come up with a plan. We're just here to show both perspectives of why it's important to get safe immediately and separate from the situation.
Mhm.
Do you have any last words?
Well, just in the future, when we're able to help people out more, like give them housing or give them a bunch of resources, we will let you guys know because that is the goal. The goal is to be able to house people eventually that are going through things like this and just help out more on a one-to-one basis. We will definitely let you know. So if you're watching this channel, please like, subscribe,
Yeah.
and just get out there so we could help out as many people as we can.
Yes,
And hopefully we start getting donors so we can start raising money to get a place so we can house people in the near future.
yes. So thank you all for watching.